It showed up on the horizon 2 years and 3 months ago, and we became aware of it pretty quickly. At that time, January of 2012, it was a blip on the horizon. It was just, it existed somewhere. It existed in Europe since the mid-90s, but it made its way to this country, and it was enough of a concern that we began to get educated about it. Some of you saw us in that January when we did a smaller presentation like this. And so what's happened now is, it's now in the States. It's now in at least 8 states on the East Coast. It's in nurseries we deal with and we know. So now it's really relevant. And we knew it was relevant 2 years ago, but now it's really come full circle. Okay? So we haven't seen it, I'm not aware of it in Albemarle County anywhere, but we are concerned about it. For that reason, we've asked Robert Saunders to join us again, Saunders Brothers Nursery. Norman Dart from the Virginia Department of Agriculture and Consumer Services is also here. Norman runs the labs. Norman, is that fair?
I work in the lab, yep.
We work in the labs, and so, anyway, Norman is here just to provide any feedback. We're going to have a question and answer session at the end of all this. So lunch will be a good thing, otherwise we will all have cookies for lunch. The bathrooms are out this door. Packed a bunch of people in here today.
I'll take the names ones
So,
on this side.
thank you all for tolerating that.
There's only 2 names on it.
Need to use the restrooms, they're out this door down the hall. So talk to yourself, come go as you need. You have questions, almost questions already. I want you to hold your questions to the end, okay? Robert's going to speak. The format today is I'm going to give you a quick summary, update of what's happening in our company. Robert's going to jump in and talk for about 25 minutes about his nursery, Boxwood, Blight, just come back from Europe. So he's been talking to people there. We'll get an update on that. Norman will update us additionally. So that's about 25 minutes of Robert talk. Then we'll have that 20 minutes worth of construction. Okay? And that's what most of us want to know when we start digging in, finding out the details about this disease. Okay? My objective is not to educate you today, just to educate you. If you leave here concerned, then I think I probably delivered the message that I want you to have. Because I think the issue is worth being concerned about. So I want to steer anybody to know, anybody to be afraid of Boxwood to know there's a long-term solution to this. So, but we need to be talking about it. So what I'm going to tell you today, and what Robert's going to tell you today, is what we know right now. Okay? What we knew 6 months ago is different than what we know today. What we knew a year ago is different than we know today. So I'm going to tell you what we know right now, and maybe 6 months from now, we know something else. Okay? It's evolving. So that's what we're talking about. So you'll see in front of you a number of handouts. You'll see everything from another JBT calendar, which you can hang in your somewhere out back. For anybody that doesn't have one, please take one. You'll see 3 handouts, 3 from NC State, 1 from the state of Virginia, 1 from Saunders Brothers. You'll see Robert's newest Boxwood catalog, which is hot off the press. He's going to start talking about some disease-resistant boxwoods, which is exciting to hear about. There's a questionnaire in there. I'd like for you all to fill out if you don't mind. Just give us some feedback in terms of whether or not discussions like this are valuable to you, and if so, what kind of future discussions could be of equal value to you. So I'm pleased to say we have a broad range of people. I have a number of our staff here. So we have a great broad mix of folks representing the tree industry, the landscape architecture industry, the landscape design industry, property management, estate management. So we've got a real great mix of people, and I'm sure we're going to have a good discussion about this topic. So let me get through quickly and get on to the really important stuff. So you all seen this before. This is who we are as a company. Particularly proud of this piece right here. We spent a lot of effort encouraging certification, professionalism, staying up to date, getting our CEUs in to keep all of our people certified, etc. Where we work in Virginia, if anybody doesn't know, we basically work inside that circle. So we, from the edge of the northern neck, Hot Springs, to the Virginia-Carolina border, up to Rappahannock County. Most of you know us for our landscape installation jobs. I hope you like the snow that's in the snow on the screen. It's not moving. We do residential landscape maintenance and fine gardening on a high level. I think you all know about that as well. This used to be a swimming pool. You also may know about our wildflower meadows. So this will be our 7th year planting wildflower meadows. There's several hundred acres now of wildflower meadows across Virginia. Our newest meadow is a meadow that's full of cut flowers that you can take inside. So we're diverting a little bit from wildflowers to now cut flowers. Imagine a 5-acre cutting garden. We do commercial maintenance, not something we did so much of 10 years ago. We now maintain the Mount Jefferson Hospital, Fairfield Shopping Center, a number of University of Virginia properties. It's been a fun place for us to be working. Hot Pots came out 2 years ago. It's unique container gardens. That business has been great. What's new and kind of fun, we kind of discovered there's actually an event rental business in the middle of Hot Pots. So if you want to take a magnolia, you know, a 12, 14-foot magnolia into a wedding venue, and fill a wedding venue full of flower inspired or hydrangea, it's something we're now doing fun. As you know, we also do turf grass. So enough about us. Robert? Well, I'm glad to have you. Robert Saunders, Saunders Rose Nursery. Robert is, he says 2nd generation, maybe 3rd generation, but if you really start counting all the Saunders, it might be 6 generations. So, I think going farther than that. But I'm going to turn this over to you and let you speak to us about that. And again, Norman's going to join us towards the end, just to answer any questions at the end. And if you don't mind just holding your questions until we get through this, I think it'll be more productive time for us.
Thank you, Jay. Everybody hear me hopefully good enough. I'm a big loud talker, my wife says, so I need to tune it down sometimes. Kind of a side note, or just kind of bring us up to speed. Yeah, I guess it's been almost 3 years now where this thing jumped on the horizon, and I kind of take it back to the analogy of the stink bug. We go back, and the stink bugs appeared about 3-4 years ago on the horizon for each of us. They were finding their way into our houses, and we were having to do whatever with. Well, I grew up one of 7 brothers. My mom could not hurt a flea. No matter what it was, everything is God's creature, and she can't hurt it. So initially when stink bugs came, my mom would catch the stink bugs and take them outside and let them go. And then as time went on and she realized what the stink bug was about, and if you know that we grow fruit, we grow about 200 acres of fruit, and she realized at that point, I said, Mom, you know that stink bug is sticking its mouth in that thing and sucking on that apple, peach, or pear or whatever, and then letting it go and it's rotten. Well, next thing I know, my mom is catching the stink bugs now, putting them in a jar, and she's going to crucify them by dumping them in the chickens and let the chickens eat them. So she had a big change of heart on where we went with stink bugs. I think that's where we are with Boxwood Blight. I talked to some of you a couple of years ago, or about 2 years ago, Jay, we talked on it. The game's changed a lot. I know a lot more now than I did. I think the Norm will be able to add a lot. We all know a lot more about what's going on with the blight at this point. So I want to go through it, tell you what I know. I'm probably going to miss some different points because I do these talks. Did one yesterday. I had to approach it from a different side, so I'm going to forget as I'm talking what I've talked about. But at the back end, let's talking about questions on. You know, Boxwood popularity has exploded in the last 15 years due to deer problems, drought problems, all those different things. So, and the expansion of varieties and the different shapes and all that we've been able to pick up and use and utilize in the landscapes now. So popularity is just increasing exponentially. Deer problems, you know, they've eaten every arborvitae we had. The drought tolerance, the terrible summers we've had up until this past summer where we were losing all the Jap polys and all those things to drought. Boxwood are so much more drought tolerant. Versatility, we can go to a de-rump or something where we can be 2.5 feet wide and 8 feet tall. And then this one's got a couple of them, Justin Browers and Elegant Discipline, and all, where we can get lots of different shapes and sizes. So again, lots of things have happened. You know, we've up till 2 years ago, if we planted the boxwood right, we irrigated it right, kept its feet dry. Don't want to have wet feet on them. Nutrition was simple for Boxwood. They only one major pest, Boxwood leaf miner, which we've learned lots and lots about. A side note, in the book I just finished writing, we're actually doing tests on Boxwood leaf miner and are showing the range of resistance to leaf miner. We're showing some that are not very good, green velvets and some of those guys, the leaf miner's kind of chasing pretty hard. We get over into Varda Valley and some of those guys, that pretty much does not mess with at all. But there is a section on that in the new Boxwood guide. But you know, we've got some other pests, mites that are causing a few problems, but not to the level that we're seeing with the leaf miners. And basically, till this point, they've been disease-free if we've done the first four things right. Boxwood have been easy to handle. And all was fine until Boxwood Blight stepped on the table. Couple different fancy names, of however you want to call them, and I'm not going to attempt to. We'll just call it Box Blight today. So it's a fungus that has showed up in Europe, was positively identified in 1994. There's lots of people that are talking differently about where it came from. Did it come down from Central America or the Caribbean or somewhere there? Did it come out of some of the original plantings in somewhere in Eastern Europe? Nobody knows positively, but in reality, it's in Europe. It's been there since '94, and it's kind of been one of those things that has kind of ebbed and flowed in Europe. When the conditions got right, it exploded, and they saw lots of it, and then the conditions went away, they didn't see much of it. This is typical of what they're seeing in some different places in Europe. This is a plant that had blight in it, and the conditions were right. Blight exploded in that. That's a sempervirens, just straight American boxwood. When the conditions went away, the plant re-energized, the foliage came back out, and we got it there. This is a small hedge where a section had blight in it, and the section had to be taken out, and then you can see the plants are doing fine on either side of it. So again, it's been an in and out thing that's happened there. So, in speaking of Europe, just had the opportunity last week. I spent in Germany. If you've ever heard of the Essen show, IPM Essen show, it's the equivalent of if you've been to Mainz in Baltimore. It's that times about 1.5. It's a huge show for all of Europe. About 1,500 booths there. People from about 50 countries exhibiting. Attendees, about 60 to 80,000 attendees there looking at what's going on. So I had a great opportunity to be there, see the show. But one of the interesting things that I saw was sempervirens boxwood, which is very susceptible to boxwood blight, is 98% of the plants that are on the floor. The Europeans have not embraced a lot of these new varieties. They're behind the States on that. But you're seeing them, you know, this is a guy that's selling these, all different shapes and all of straight sempervirens. Some more with it. Notice how tightly everything's being sheared over there. And we'll talk about that a little bit later. But lots of boxwood still happening. Again, all sempervirens, straight sempervirens being pruned into a very tight hedge, being sold as hedges. They're selling there, I think it's about, everything's in meters and all over there, but that's about 1.5 meters of hedge they sell. It's about 30 inches tall, where they've just sheared them. These plants are on about 14-inch centers or so. So lots and lots of sempervirens still on the ground over there. So terrible slide on the way it turned out. This was a grower that's in Holland that has on the ground right now 14 million sempervirens. That's the only plant he's planting. So where am I going with all this that's going on in Europe? The reality is Europe has had this thing for 20 years, and they're still planting sempervirens. They're living with it, and this guy's expanding production. They're figuring out how to live with it. He's got his own, that's his business, topbuxus.com, but he's selling a little concoction or cocktail there that he's getting his people to spray on, and is having some luck keeping the disease out with that. But again, sempervirens is #1 still in Europe, even with its susceptibility. This guy, when he sells them, he's selling them all to be pruned into dwarf hedges. They don't see the big sempervirens like we see over here. Everything wants to be in that small hedge. So, jumping forward, this thing has appeared in the United States in 11. This is a picture from one of the outbreaks that occurred up in New England. The other one, I think this one is from some plants down in North Carolina. Very typical of what you will see. You see the spot where the fungus got onto it, and you see the halos on it. You see them in several different places on the plant. This is much later stage once the foliage has fallen off of the plants. But again, the halos, it's not boxwood blight. I got 25 calls this fall where people would see a brown limb in the side of a plant. That is not boxwood blight. Boxwood blight is these lesions with halos around them. And I gave you one handout there that on the flip side of it, it's got some really good pictures of what it looks like. You can go online. NC State's got some great ones. University of Connecticut's got some good stuff there. So what happens is these lesions get on the leaf in about 2 or 3, 4 days, if conditions are right, and that leaf falls off the plant. Here's some plants testing where it's come off of, and you'll see, I'll talk a little bit more about it, but you get a rapid defoliation of the plant. Typically does not kill the plant unless the plant is very juvenile. It'll defoliate, and then as we saw those pictures in Europe, the plant will refoliate and it'll pop right back. English boxwood, Buxton sempervirens fructicosa, is the commercially most susceptible commercial available variety out there right now. If there's going to be something that's going to be lost because of boxwood blight, in my opinion, in the United States, it's going to be the use of English boxwood in the landscape. I think it's overdue to quit being used. And I'm speaking from a guy that sells English boxwood. English boxwood paid my college tuition, but it's not going to pay my kids' college tuition. It's just probably the plant that we're going to see we're going to lose because of blight. So again, we'll see lesions appear with halos on them, and then the foliage eventually falls off. These spores, and this is very, very important, is how the spores are moving. The spores are sticky spores, and they don't move like if anybody heard of impatient downy mildew, the problem that's out there, that impatient downy mildew, it'll pick it up and it can blow that thing hundreds of miles literally. This one, the wind is not going to move. The spore is very sticky. It's going to move. It loves to move by water splash, plant to plant contact, a plant that's infected, touching another plant. Debris is a huge one. You go on to, there's debris on one job site, that debris getting moved to another job site, or being on a truck where the people are moving in and off of it, that debris carries it, and is a great way to move it between two places. And then on our clothing and our equipment. I saw pictures in North Carolina where a team had sheared one field of plants and had not done anything with it, and there was blight in that field. They moved to the next field, they're cleaning their shears, and they carried it right through that field. Saw another picture where a bush hog had bush hogged a field and had gotten it on it, and then it went on into a successive field, and that bush hog, right where it rubs along the bottom of the plants, the blight went into those plants also. So very easily moved. We need to think, and we'll think about it a little bit more as I'll go over some stuff, how we can keep it from moving and stopping it. And it will survive in this dead foliage and debris for long periods of time. And I've got years, nobody knows positively how long it will survive. Once it gets into those, the test at first they said 5 years, and then they continued to test and they realized, well, they go to 7 years, and it just keeps going. So the key is, if it's spotted, is keeping this dead foliage and debris away from good boxwood. So when, grab a drink of water. The key to blight is keeping the blight from being present. But once it's there and all the conditions get right, it explodes, and when the conditions go away, it becomes more, it recedes a little bit, I guess is a good way to put it. So if the blight is present, the moisture and wet foliage are conditions that make it happen. So what do you do on that is in holding yards, you avoid, you minimize the wet time of the foliage. So what are we doing at Saunders Brothers? We're irrigating our boxwood before 8 a.m., between 6 and 8 a.m. Any irrigation happens, then it starts drying out as quickly as possible. It's positively dry by the end of the day, goes to bed at night dry. So you're not keeping that foliage wet. The spore landing on dry space dies. The spore landing on wet foliage gives it time to make things happen. Okay? So you want to keep it, so if you've got irrigation systems set up, avoid that irrigation system from going into the boxwood. You minimize your chances of problems if it appears to keep that foliage dry longer periods of time. The temperature it loves is in that 70 to 75 range. It's been known to spread at higher temperatures and lower, but that's the optimal temperature that we see things happening. Poor air circulation is another one. You know, we get lots of diseases when we get poor air circulation. So we've got to be sure that we're getting good air movement, whether it's on a holding space where we're getting ready to plant them, or then when we move them into the landscape. We've got to probably lessen the density of plantings. I'm not going to tell you to quit planting hedgerows of plants where you're cutting them in, but if you do, we've got to make extra steps to maximize the airflow within them. Again, the overcrowding in the holding areas, lessening that. Don't put 20 of them in the corner of the holding area, because you know tomorrow those plants are coming out and going on to the job. Because tomorrow it rains, or tomorrow somebody else barks a little bit louder, and you change your plans. Next thing you know, you come back 3 weeks later and you've gotten everything up there. But it does not appear spontaneously in there. You've got to introduce it, or you've got to come in with something to make it appear into those plants. But what I'm trying to do, if it's present, is minimize the chance of it exploding. In the repeated heavy shearing, what the people are doing there, when they want that little dwarf edge, and the last boxwood guide, if you got it, it had on its picture from Mount Vernon where they had Justin Brower and Morris Dwarf in a really tight little knot garden. What they're doing there is they're going in the winter and taking out little plugs just to get air and sunlight penetration down in this, so that plant will dry out on the inside. So you get a lot of these things. You see why it affects English boxwood so bad. If you pulled an English boxwood open and looked at all that just mush that's inside those leaves that have precipitated into the middle of it and gotten wet and everything, is so let me just kind of, having seen this, so what are we doing at Saunders Brothers to right now, we believe we do not have boxwood blight. So how are we going to keep it out? That's the whole thing. We're trying to stay at keeping it out to buy time as long as we can. If you come to the nursery, you cannot enter the nursery. Our nursery is closed to the public. If you want to see it, you get in the truck with me and you ride through, but you don't get out and look at it. When I deliver, if I deliver to Jay, if I unload a plant, a boxwood goes on the ground, it's his. The plant's his at that point, once it's unloaded. I will not take a plant back into the nursery. If he looks at it on the truck and doesn't want it, if he wants to get on the ground as a problem, then he and I work that out ahead of time, afterwards. So we're not buying liners from anyone. There's some thought about how this thing came into the United States. Probably the most followed theory is it came in on liners from Europe. And in Europe, I realized the other day being over there that Europe is pretty much a big homogeneous country right now. You can move between countries basically and not stop anywhere, cross borders in all of the European Union, so that it can move over there pretty freely. And then trade to Canada is extremely easy, and Norm could probably answer a lot of this stuff better than I, but a lot of people feel it went from Europe to Canada, where there's a pretty open border, and then Canada to the United States, which is a very open border. We've seen a lot in Canada, or it could have been where I, as a boxwood collector over there, picked the plant up and stuck it in my pocket or hid it in my luggage as I came back into the United States, and bam, it's here. So we're not bringing any cuttings in. We're doing propagation 100% from our own stock. We have developed an off-site transitional place, so if Jay comes up with a really cool plant he wants me to try, we'll take it, we'll put it off-site, which is about 10 miles from the nursery. We'll sit on it there for a year under heavy shade, heavy irrigation, doing everything we possibly can to make it, if it's sick, if it's got blight, make it show up, and then we will transition it back into the nursery if we see it clear. And then there's a big thing, the nursery compliance agreement that's set up through Virginia Department of Agriculture and nurseries, where there's a lot of steps, and I don't have the copy of it. It's available on our website. You can read it, but we basically have to sign these things, and if it shows up, we have to report it to VDAX, and then they have pre-decided steps that we have to take to eradicate it. The reality is, it's going to show up at my nursery one day. How it's going to get there, I don't know. It may come in on my pants after I visited a garden somewhere or something. I don't know. But when it happens, we're going to find it, we're going to locate it, and we're going to get it out, and we're going to move on. It's I think the reality is we're going to live with it down the road. We've got to learn to live with it. Kind of then jumping ahead, some chemical options. They're finding out that we can prevent boxwood blight, but once it happens, we can't control it, other than the eradication of the plants and improving the conditions. Chlorothalonil has been I've got, if you go to NC State and look and Google boxwood blight, they've got lots of chemicals that are going on there. The chlorothalonil sprayed on plants, head of it, testing is done, and then the plants, spray chlorothalonil on susceptible plants. The plants, blight was introduced to the plants, and the plants did not get it. So we're actually, and this is the first time publicly, we're spraying chlorothalonil on a lot of plants right now. Because we believe without having it, if we spray chlorothalonil, we buy time, and then into the future to do some things I'll talk about in just a minute with varietal tolerance on it. But again, some of the stuff from NC State is pretty neat on it. There's several other chemicals that are being tested, but chlorothalonil is the one right now that is the product that's working to prevent it. Varietal testing that's going on. This is the part that I'm most excited about right now. The Europeans told us when we went over there in 2011 that every variety is going to get it and no chemical will stop it. And then we found out no chemical will stop it, but one will prevent it. And we're finding out some really good things about varietal tolerance, because our gamut of varieties is so much bigger than what they've got. So at NC State, briefly what's going on is they're taking in cultivars. They take a English boxwood, they spray it with a heavy solution of boxwood blight, they put it in a wet plastic bag for a couple of days and let boxwood blight explode on that plant. Then they set it down under an area of about 75% shade, and then they put 6 plants touching it all the way around of a different cultivar. They've got all of these all over a pad, and then they're irrigating them 3 times a day under 75% shade cloth. So they're trying, and then going back, and I'll show you some things. This is that plant in the middle, and then all these plants are circling around it, trying to see which ones will get it. And then here, again, a test plant, I forget all my chemistry terms, but the English is the one that goes in there, that's the one that is kind of the marker to follow everything from. So different ways it's affected. You know, you can see just an occasional lesion. That's Buxus microphylla John Baldwin. Here's elegantissima. We see lots more lesions on the leaves there. As a rule of thumb, we're finding out that the microphylla boxwoods are going to be more resistant. The sempervirens cultivars are more susceptible. This is D-Rump. Here's the plant, a close-up. Noah asked me just a minute ago, why is D-Rump somewhat more resistant? Basically, our belief is architecture of the plant. The plant is taller, it's more open, it's going to have less chance of getting blight just because it physically has better air movement and is a little bit more open plant. You've got a copy of this one, and this is not the Bible. The one you've got is not the Bible. It's one test, and there's many of these tests going on, but you can see Green Beauty, Boxwood microphyllic Green Beauty, and Solaris Nana, some of those, the minimal amount of blight there, and then you go up here to some fruticosa, then you're talking about 65% of the foliage was affected by them. So lots of options between them. This is one that I'm probably more excited about. A second one, and you can't merge the two. This one I don't think has actually hit the streets yet. But again, Green Beauty made the top on it. And then we came in, you see some varieties, SB 17, 23, 21, 8. Those are some Saunders Brothers varieties that we're super excited about that are our genetics. This one says SB 17 looks like wintergreen. It's tighter. It is resistant to blight and resistant to boxwood leaf miner. So really good one. 503 is the one we'll probably introduce in the next 3 or 4 years. An upright that will hang with the rump, if not make you turn around, and it's just an incredible plant there with that one. But the new genetics, we believe, we're testing about 125 varieties right now, trying to find blight resistance and leaf miner resistance. So really good things going on there. So you've got this list. Just quickly going, use trusted suppliers. Talk to your people that you're buying boxwood from. Do they understand blight and are they taking care of it? I cannot be the sole supplier of boxwood to everything Townsend does or anything, but there's plenty of other guys that know it and understand it. And even if you're not buying boxwood from them and you're buying something else and they grow boxwood, you still need to have that same discussion. Because they can be carrying it and the foliage or something to those boxwood can get into the U's or whatever you're buying from. So have a discussion with the supplier. Isolate new plants and inspect them. There's argument whether how long you do it, but we say unload them, look at them, and be sure the plants are clean. Use those flip charts and look at them and see if you recognize anything. Hold plants good, keep good air movement. Proper cultivar selection. I could spend another 2 hours going through that book and talking about some of these cultivars that are really 25 in there. You can get some neat stuff off of. Pruning, keep that airflow. Avoiding overhead irrigation whenever you can. They're going to drip whenever possible. Sanitizing equipment, clothes, and shoes between areas. They know the symptoms. When you're suspicious, get to the labs with those plants. Keep some Ziploc bags in your truck, in your car, or whatever, and they just take a cutting somehow without touching them so much, get it in a Ziploc and get it somewhere, and let the extension people do it. And then if you got it, they talk to other people about it, they take care of it. And then last thing is we need to talk about it. This is not something we can hide under the rug and not talk about. The landscapers need to know about it, consumers need to know about it, designers, everybody needs to know about what's going on because again, it's a reality. We're going to face it down the road. Again, some pictures that we pulled off of some different plants that I think give you an idea of upfront diagnosis of it. One last thing I want to put in, there's this opportunity. American Boxwood Society is having their symposium in College Park, Maryland, the 13th through the 16th. This day, May 15th, you can buy it a la carte, and I've got some folders if anybody's interested. The top people in the world on boxwood blight will be there to talk about it, to talk about the future of it. There's some really neat stuff that's happening. Your government dollars are paying for, where they're doing some stuff there. Stuff out of Europe is coming in, but the top people in the world will be there talking about this thing, and again, a great opportunity there. That was fast, too.
Packing it in.